So early learning standards aren't new to us in this day and age, but many years ago when they first started to emerge, we weren't quite sure what to do with them and how to make sense of them. So we developed this thing called Big Ideas for Early Learning that was designed to help us make sense of all the different things that people thought young children should learn, as well as sort of a framework to look across sources and say, are they all saying teach the same sort of thing? So as I look across Head Start, or I look across a district set of priorities, or I look across an assessment, or the early learning standards in my state, what are they all saying to me? So we came up with a framework that we again call the Big Ideas for Early Learning. And the big ideas, there's a bit of a definition and kind of the context of them, and then there are 16 of them. 5 of them we refer to as knowledge big ideas, and then the other 11 are processes. And the sort of the beauty of it is when you pair a knowledge big idea with a process big idea. That's how you get some melody, if you will. So if you think of an analogy of a piano, if I just play one note, so I just teach labels, but if I pair labeling, let's say, with something like inquiry or reasoning, now it starts to have some depth to it and some interest. So the idea is to teach more than one big idea at the same time. There's also not an inherent sequence to the big ideas. These are things that emerge throughout the lifespan. So there's not this idea that we start in one place and then we can sequentially build to other big ideas. They're all emerging in early childhood, and they're all important for young children's eventual success in school and in life. So the glossary is designed to encourage children to use both verbal and nonverbal expressions, and particularly to use a combination of both. So we really want to show examples of how children are able to show what they know and can do from a verbal and a nonverbal perspective. And so it starts off alphabetically with the first 5 big ideas, and each big idea is listed in the band along the left-hand side of the glossary, and then it's defined at the top of the glossary entry. So here we have associations. Sometimes we give a synonym, so that if you're like, what's an association? It's things that have relationships, that are related to each other. So we give a definition, then we break it down. Oftentimes a big idea has multiple components, and this will become more important as we talk about kids who are struggling or whose development has stalled. What does a component of something bigger mean? So here under associations we have 4 components: quantity, size, spatial, and temporal. But then, even with under quantity, we have certain layers. So this glossary provides us with a taxonomy or a framework or a schemata in which to organize, but it's really quite complicated as we kind of layer it back. So under the big idea of associations, we have quantity, which is the amount that can be measured of something. So there's concepts and terms, there's values or units or number tags, and then there's notions about weight and length. So each of those is an element or an aspect of quantity. And then we give examples, and we try to give examples of what kids would do on a day-to-day basis, again, verbally and non-verbally, in terms of demonstrating the emergence of associations. And then you'll see the next component of associations, which is size. It's defined and then examples. And then spatial, again defined with examples. And the 4th component of associations, which is temporal, defined and examples. Then it goes on to the next big idea, which is the 2nd of 5 knowledge big ideas, which is attributes. And attributes also has 4 components: color, quality, shape, and texture. And then each of those is defined. We go a few pages, we come to the next big idea, which is function. Interestingly, this one also has 4 components: objects, roles, rules, and social norms. And then we get to labeling, which is another big idea. It doesn't have components, but rather lots of examples of ways in which kids can label objects, people, places, and events, and use those labels to help them catalog, classify, search, and so forth. And then the last knowledge big idea, which is reliance, and it happens to have components of 3 types: physical, biological, and personal social. Once you get through the first 5, you then end up with the 11 process big ideas. The 11 process big ideas follow the same sort of format. On the left-hand side, you'll see the big idea, a synonym if we've given you one, and then at the top you'll see a definition followed by examples. So this is about classifying. You'll also see if it's related to another big idea. So here, classifying is really paired with, goes nicely with, if you will, attributes. When we come down to compare and contrast, we see that this is paired nicely with that very first big idea that we saw, which is associations. Comprehension, creating, inquiry, one-to-one, problem solving, and then you'll see this goes on till the end of the alphabet here, till you have 11 big ideas. But reasoning is one I want to draw attention to. We'll be looking at reasoning deeper as we think about how does reasoning look as it emerges in early childhood, and how are we intentionally providing instruction around reasoning. So these are the big ideas for early learning. There are 16 of them: 5 knowledge, 11 processes, the ideas that they are taught concurrently, that they are taught systematically, that they are taught intentionally, and that these big ideas can be easily aligned to other standards, other developmental expectations, common curriculum-based assessments that we may be using, district-wide norms, and so forth. But this is a common way to get to where all adult members of the early learning, early childhood community are speaking with one voice, so that we all know what is important to teach young children, and that we systematically plan for and design learning activities that address these big ideas.